5, 4, 3, and Charlie will take it from there. Yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you say nothing, and Charlie will go. Okay. Yep. Okay. Let's go. Charlie, you ready? Perfect.
Welcome to another riveting edition of Risk and Return. I'm Charlie Gasparino from Fox Business and the New York Post. I'm with my partner in crime, Bob Sloan, the granddaddy of data, the chairman, the founder, the data collector for S3 Partners, the number one independent data provider on the Bloomberg network. Bob's here with his insights, with his statistics, with his calls. But before we get into any of that, we're not going to bury the lead here. We're in an interesting situation in the market. Bob, let me lay it out for you. As you know, Trump promised obliteration of a civilization. At the last minute, he said, let's go 2 weeks. We'll do a ceasefire. The Iranians are kind of listen, I don't know who runs that country. I don't think anybody really knows who's running the country. But whoever is nominally or maybe mostly in charge says they control the Straits of Hormuz. They're letting some ships go, apparently, some not. They might charge tolls. Trump came out today, said he's gonna get some of that money too with the Iranians, which I find just mind-boggling. But nothing surprises me these days. But the market is taking this as it's over. I kind of don't think it's over, but what do you think?
Well, remember the market's still driven a lot by momentum. And
And
when
algorithms, right?
well, that's what I was going to say. When the machines start to take over, it just goes one way. So if there's any bit of positivity or negativity, it overshoots both ways. So I wouldn't read the market move as a vote in, wow, this is all done. It's just algorithms doing what algorithms do. They find momentum and they keep pushing until they can't push anymore. As far as Iran, we had the great Jack Devine on, and one of
Yep.
the things we asked Jack was, what happens if the country fragments? I studied a lot of Japanese history. A lot of the feudal periods were periods of strife between what they call the daimyos, which were basically the provincial lords,
Right.
and they were always warring, and no one can unify the country for something like 300 years until Tokugawa Ieyasu came along and unified the country. And I think you're in a place where you have real warlords jockeying for position, and we don't know who the most powerful warlord is because we and the Israelis keep eliminating all the people that could be the warlords. So you're in this state of the country's under attack. Its currency is worthless. People can't get money out of banks. They know their energy infrastructure could be gone tomorrow, and yet they have effectively caused economic pain to us as well. And to me, gas was $5 a gallon under Obama and Biden. So I'm not sure why we
Right.
freak out when gas
Primarily.
is at
Yeah.
$4 a barrel. But besides that, it's complicated when there's many voices out there, and there's no council, right? There's no coming together for a voice to represent that government. And you've had the first AI Ayatollah, right? I mean, that's an incredible thing in of itself that someone is actually
AI
probably.
Ayatollah, there's a headline right there.
It's true. He's the AI, the guy's the AI Ayatollah. I mean, it's a crazy thing. There's obviously artificial intelligence. He's obviously incapacitated. He can't speak, otherwise he would. No one would let their legacy and lineage be usurped by somebody else if they were really a serious power player. They just wouldn't let it happen. So I'm not sure that anybody could say with any amount of confidence how they think this will turn out, particularly when the news reports are that this was done. Our partner in the raid really had no voice at the table, and now you have JD Vance going over there with uh, Wickoff and Jared Kushner. I'd probably rather see Rubio go, but that's just me.
Here's an interesting perspective from someone in the administration. I asked him his thoughts. Um, kind of one, he said, lesson one: why on earth is the world, Asia, Europe, and by extension, but not directly North America, dependent on Iran? A total failure of 30 years of foreign policy and economic statecraft. Pretty true. Like, we kind of allowed this wacky, freakazoid, religiously apocalyptic government to control a big chunk of the economy. Number two, Iran is feudal, not centrally controlled, as you said. As US presses forwards, will shift to breaking off the feudal states. And here's the final point he made: many Iranian leaders are kleptocrats, storing money and children offshore. Go after their money, expel their kids. It's true. They're here. I mean, the aristocracy. We know this from Soleimani's niece and these. I mean, they're living in luxury in L.A. Also kind of interesting. Market does not believe war will severely hurt the global economy. Kind of an interesting comment there. That the market is kind of looking. I mean, listen, if you really believe this was apocalyptic, wouldn't oil be like $200 by now?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that there's a great disconnect between where human beings think discretionary forces and so discretionary capital versus machine-led capital.
Right.
And there really needs to be a ratio between how much is actually machine driven versus human driven. I think if you have a human lens on it, you would say all those things. The overlay is, what is the algorithm programmed to do? And so with the algorithm, to me, there's more algorithmic money at play than there is
Oh yeah.
discretionary.
Everybody's
Yeah,
risk is set to the algorithm, right?
it's so what everybody's risk model is saying is that, well, the United States is independent. The United States does have its own oil supply. It is an exporter of gasoline. So therefore, if you panic, sure, can the oil get to 140, which it did, at least Brent did. Um, and could it go to $200 a barrel? If you uh, bombed all the energy infrastructure, if Iran did
Right.
that, I I think um, I think no one's made the case that says $5 a gallon of gas is worth taking the risk of folks that you don't know what actually, you do know what they're gonna do with the nuclear weapons. You do
Yeah.
know. It's not a question of, like, what would they do? We know what they're going to do. And so to deny that for $5 a gas is, uh, is probably bad risk management, bad societal management on our part.
This country has gone through $5 a gas. I mean, it's not great. It's horrible on working class people. I get it, but we've done it. We've done it for stupid reasons, not for. I mean, taking out the world's like something. Listen, if you're going to put evil regimes on a sort of on on a spreadsheet, up there very high would be the Iranians, obviously.
I think they're number 1, right? They are the most maligned.
Yes, of course.
They're
North Korea. I mean, North Korea is not exporting terrorism.
well, North Korea does all the counterfeiting and everything else, but still, Iran's scale and their malignancy is unlike anything else, right? And, that you go around it, it reminds me a little bit of some of the people you meet in the financial industry, which is if you go around all day saying you're the best, I'm the best. We have the best traders. We have the best investors. We have the best marketers. We have the best risk management. We have the best operation. Best. And you keep putting yourself in that echo chamber. You believe that you're the best.
All
You
right.
just believe it because that's what you have to do to be in the business. And for 47 years, Iran's heard death to America. We're the smartest. We're the greatest. And so they believe it. And, sorry, they're suicidal maniacs.
Yes. And
They
Trump
are.
is the only president, you got to give him credit, to take them out. I mean, as
They're
much as he
they're
can.
suicidal maniacs. We've seen this before. I mean, Japan, suicidal maniacs. They believed in the emperor was God, and they were willing to die for that. What's the difference?
Yep.
What is the difference? We're
Germany to a certain
willing
extent as well.
Germany to a certain extent, absolutely suicidal maniacs. We've seen this before. We understand what needs to be done. And, this is my point of view. You can argue with it. That's fine. But it's when they're conditioned and indoctrinated that way. Now, if you ask anybody that is a Hindu, what happened at the partition of India and what happened to folks that were in Bangladesh, ask what happened to the Hindis that were in Bangladesh when the partition happened of India and Pakistan was created, Bangladesh was created, and then India was created. There was a partition between Muslim and Hindu.
Sure.
Ask what happened in Bangladesh to any Hindu that was there. They were slaughtered. Slaughtered.
Yeah.
It was it is endemic to a lot of uh, it is a historical fact that when jihad is declared and these things happen, that there is a follow through. That's a fact.
So the
And
question
so we
is,
can say these things, but it's a fact.
the question is, Bob, there's going to be a market price to pay for taking them out, and we're not done yet, obviously.
I,
How do
I
we
um,
play this? How do we deal with this? What do you do if you're the average investor? You stay invested. You go into cash. I mean, it's a trader's market, kind of, right?
it is a trader's market. It's also a short seller's market. Has been um, when I think there's a couple of different things. One is, and we can get into some of the stocks we want to talk about, or if you want to talk about the Fed chair or the lack of the appointment of the new Fed chair, we can talk about that too. This market is so dependent upon one event, like interest rates backseat, inflation backseat, Ukraine backseat. One of the more interesting things is what happens to Ukraine.
They're starting to win again. It looks like.
Correct. And they're starting to win again because they have the best technology.
Yep.
And this now is a war about technology, and it is a war about AI, and it is the first one that's ever been fought this way. So, um, we talked about in this show about how air power actually overtake and overthrow a regime, and that's been you know the debate around air power is it enough? And boy, if you'd started out 30 days ago and said you destabilize the government enough to where it really doesn't have a unified voice, does that give you the upper hand? I think so. Hormuz, you got to go through Hormuz to get to Karg. I don't know why people don't read a map, but that's what you have to go do. And we have to be very sensitive to what kind of boots on the ground we put and where we put them, particularly in the Gulf. Remember what bin Laden's call to action, what his real public appeal was that the infidels were in the Holy Land.
Yep.
And that is what started it, and that was what had great appeal. I'm not
It
saying
doesn't
that
have
that
the same
was
appeal though now.
right. I'm not saying he wasn't a power megalomaniac, but that is what had appeal. And so we have to be very, 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 very careful about how and where we stage the next part of our campaign. I personally think that there's too many factions for it to be unified and would probably fail.
Is it possible that the market starts to decouple from this at some point? We still have wicked amounts of spending on AI. I mean, one of the things that if you read through some of the Oracle stuff is that they're
They laid off
plowing it,
30% of their people.
but then they're plowing into AI again. I mean, like they're
Yeah.
kind of remaking the company, right?
Mm.
That's what it looks like to me.
Um,
So there is,
Anybody that is, the thing is, AI and machine learning have been around for a long time, Charlie. We've used it here at S3 for a decade.
yeah,
It's not new. What is new is the role of an agent. And what is new is the role of something that can perform a task for you and do it, at least be a thinking partner for you, and probably do some of the more mundane coding, debugging, database management for you. So it takes a whole rung of your organization, and every organization has this layer in it. It takes that layer and says, okay, either we retrain these folks to do something else, or you increase your margins. You let the machine do that. But only in a business where you feel like you're never going to violate your SLAs, meaning your service level agreements, so that you don't have a performance inconsistency or the agent does something you don't want it to do.
my bigger point though, Bob, and I think you would agree with this. At some point, I mean, there's more going on than just the price of oil. I mean, we are less oil dependent than we've ever been. I mean, that's one of the positives of the green movement that we became, fuel efficient in many ways. Prices went up dramatically. Cars became more fuel efficient. People use less. There's less petroleum products in everything. There are certain things that we do need. The Straits of Hormuz open for fertilizer, whatever. Just excuse me, to the truth. Sneezing
Pleasure.
to the truth here. I'm just wondering, does it decouple at some point? Because there's a lot more in this economy that's going on than just the price of oil. We have plenty of oil here. I know it's set on the global exchange, but this country, we're not going to have gas lines here. That's for sure.
Well, you know what, Charlie? Something that I wish this administration would say, because I really think it frames it really well for us, which is we spent over, I think, $100 million to save one person. We spent maybe hundreds of millions of dollars to rescue one airman.
Right.
What other country in the world would do that?
No other, but that's why they fight. That's why we have the best
Right.
fighters.
Well, but I understand. But culturally, we are against folks that line up their citizenry, shoot them, and
Right.
then take school children and line them around sensitive targets. I don't understand why this is so hard for anyone to understand how black and white an issue this is.
Well,
It
Bob,
and it
part of
just
it.
is a crazy thing to me.
Listen, part of it you can blame on messaging. I think there's something to that. The other part is you do have a media that is just. I mean, listen, I'm reading the New York Times. You would think we lost the war. I mean, I'm just saying. Even the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes some of the news stories I'm reading, I take the editorial page out, but you think we just lose that? Did Trump just give up everything for nothing? And the media is in high is at a very high degree of adversarialism with the Trump administration right now. It just no doubt, and everything he
Even
does.
if he had won, even if the country had given up, they would say, "Well, we had higher gas prices for 4 days." It's
Yeah,
just culturally that whole event where you could sense that media really wanted to say, "Oh my god, look what's gonna happen to us if we do and execute the follow through." It you know, this is unfortunately it is we have made a choice here, and it's a very drastic choice, but one. How do you have a suicidal cleric that may or may not have been sick have
You
nuclear weapons? And the thing is, by the way, the one thing that no one's really saying is, do they already have them? Do already, Witkoff's, this is the thing. Witkoff said that they probably have 11 warheads
they
already
probably they're probably underground somewhere, blown up.
somewhere. So, like, given this facts, we are Jeffrey Dawsing our way through the crisis. Jeffrey Dawson famously was the editor of the Financial Times that was pro appeasement with an aggressive Nazi regime right till they invaded Poland. So we got like that's what we got. It's just
But
it's
it's
so stark to me. I don't understand the issue.
I don't either. And if you follow Twitter, now Twitter is not the best um,
There's so
sort of
much fake
reflection.
crap out there, and it's just nonsense. And Grok actually, you got to hand it to Musk because Grok actually is a good fact checker. It is. I would say like 90% of the time it gets it right, maybe more.
Yeah, no, it does. But my point is, like, if you see the commentary, especially from the Democratic Party, I mean, okay, Trump said stuff I would never say. I'm going to obliterate a civilization. I don't think he meant civilization, by the way. Just so you know, I think what he meant was I'm going to take out the caliphate. You know what I'm saying? The crazy stuff that they've created over there. That's what he meant. And as usual, he doesn't he's a sledgehammer. And I wouldn't have said that. Listen, I wouldn't have kind of celebrated Rob Reiner, getting murdered by his son either. Right? But that's Trump. But to say that he is mentally unfit for office, the same people are saying that said Joe Biden was doing cartwheels and figuring out differential equations when he was really, crapping his pants in a diaper, probably. It's the whole thing is just crazy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, or that Kamala Harris was a policy wonk. I mean, what? I mean, I just remember these are the same people. Ro Kahana, this guy Chris Murphy from Connecticut. They're just all out there saying that. Ilyan Omar, the last person that should be commenting about anything, is saying, no, this guy's a lunatic. And it almost seems like they're rooting for Iran to win. The Times said that it called Iran resilient. Are they resilient or are they desperate at this point?
So the Times, just for the record, at the anniversary of 9/11, 25th anniversary of 9/11, right, which is
Yep.
coming up. Um, they called the attack an extreme event of political violence. They couldn't bring themselves to call it terrorism. And language matters. An extreme event of political violence. That was terrorism. That was meant to decapitate us and to destabilize us. And for all the reasons we talked about, the sensitivities of how we go about what we're going to do in the Gulf, we can't even say what is plainly obvious for fear of offense. You can't
It's
say it was terrorism because it was an extremist, a jihadist that did these things. It's
well,
we've
we
I
could
think
say
they've just lost. They slipped the Moor, right? They're gone.
we could say it. And here's what we should say to our viewers, because our viewers are thinking, like, how do we play this? I think if you're a long-term investor, I don't think you get in and out. This
I
ain't going to
think
go on
you.
forever.
I think timing the market is a fool's errand. It's very, very, very difficult.
Right.
Even the best guys can't do it. Um, Investing, no matter up or down, um, a certain amount of money and committing a certain amount of capital to the marketplace every month is probably the best way because you're going to capture some of the up, you're going to get some of the down, but at least you're consistent.
And the economy is fundamentally good, we should point out.
Yeah.
And the U.S. has plenty of oil. Things are not going to stop. It may cost more, and that's horrible, particularly for working class people. But we're not going to have gas lines. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And and
Well,
we're more fuel efficient now than ever before. We have people work remotely; they don't even have to go to the office often. Um, this is a
it,
dynamic economy that's still creating tremendous wealth. So just keep that in mind before you panic if you're long term. Now, if you're a short term investor, you care about interest rates. That's what I want to get into right now. Kevin Warsh, as you know, is still sidelined. As I wrote a piece in the Post this weekend explaining why we need him in there tomorrow or yesterday. And my big point was not just because he's going to cut rates, because he probably will. Um, my bigger point is that the Fed has been somewhat dysfunctional under power for a long time. Um, you know, I take no glee in Trump. Trump takes a sadistic glee in going after Jerome Powell. Just doesn't like him for some reason. I don't. I just don't think he was a very good Fed chair. And I can point out when he raised rates, when he cut rates, when he let inflation smolder, when he used the balance sheet too much, how he got into weird stuff like ESG, saying the Fed's economists would look at climate change as a potential systemic risk. I mean, that's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to keep prices stable within the context of as much employment as possible. He didn't do that. So you need someone that goes back to basics. I think Kevin will go back to the basics. I know he will. I've spent some time with him. The other thing is, I think he will cut rates. I mean, and maybe we do need a rate cut now. You ever think of that?
based on what the economy is growing, inflation seems to be under control.
A little bit of
We
confidence building. Is the
wage the
inflation threat?
right. It's to grow the economy and control inflation. Right. That's what they're supposed to do. That's their mandate. So um, cutting it by 25 basis points is not going to really help anybody. The question is, what does the 10-year do? And if the 10-year thinks that there is embedded inflation because you get supply chain pressure again, all the fertilizer costs go up, et cetera, et cetera. If this piece doesn't hold, you're not going to cut rates. You're going to keep them where they are.
So you think he
Um,
doesn't cut? So even if Warsh got in there yesterday, he wouldn't cut.
I, there's no need for him to cut right now.
Okay. I kind of
That's not
have
to
a
say he
feeling.
would. That's not to say he wouldn't. I'm just saying, is there a need today? Is there a fervent
Yeah.
need today?
No, not
Not
really.
really.
A little bit of a development, if you're wondering when he's getting in there, it kind of went over everybody's head. In the interim, when I wrote the column and when it got published, it was announced that the Senate Banking Committee will take him up for a vote in the next couple of weeks. I think I seem to remember April 15th. I could be wrong on that date, but half of me says it matters, half of me says it doesn't matter. I mean, they can bring him up for a vote, but if the one holdout in the Republicans, it's Tom Tillis, he's on the banking committee, he's the North Carolina Republican senator. He's not running for reelection, who has said he's not going to vote until the Powell investigation is over.
It's dropped. Right.
I mean, does it matter if they take it up for a vote? Either that, or you could say, hey, the fact that they're even scheduling it, maybe there's a backroom deal for him to vote. You know, maybe he's ready to capitulate. You know what I'm saying? So
Um,
I don't know how
I,
to look at that. Maybe you could help me out here.
I'm with you. The markets are preoccupied by the price of oil and conflict, and they're not preoccupied by the price of the 10-year. So, or upcoming auctions, or fiscal policy. One of the things that's interesting is that the Pentagon asked for $200 billion, right? And that's a public fact. It's kind of telling you what they think they'll need. You can start to do the math, right? Uh, if it's costing $1 billion a day, that's 200 days. If it's $100 billion, that's 100 days. So they're telling you what they think the timeline is for eradicating any forces that are at the Strait of Hormuz. No one's really
Yeah,
thinking about that.
yeah, that's a good point. This thing is, there's an end game here, and it's coming soon. And it may be that we just destroy the whole place. It may be that they capitulate, but something you just know in the next 2 weeks it's done. He's not going to have this lingering into the summer. And
Charlie, I'm going to take the other side of that. I think it goes on for a lot longer. I think it's very hard for think about what's happening. The whole population doesn't have internet. Russia does not have internet. The paranoia that is there because they're afraid that their movements are being tracked. So they shut down the internet. So in effect, you've shut down most of the country. I mean, how's commerce happening?
how are they getting messages? I mean, Trump said
How
something
are they
funny.
getting message? They're like all these things, right? So
Trump said something
that
funny the other day. I don't know if you saw this. He was like, "I think they're passing notes to each other."
yeah, well, but he's not wrong.
He's probably not wrong.
He's not wrong, right? So how do there's no rotary phone. As last time I checked in Iran, right? There's no probably no landlines that work either. So communication is a non thing.
Yeah,
So I just look at this and go, if we just let them cook, let them cook. They got no money coming out of the banking system. They've got no internet. The leadership is fractured. We can disrupt the flow of oil to them. There's so many different ways that time is actually on our side.
it's a good point.
If we just have the patience, if we just have the patience to see it through,
It's a
let them
good point.
cook. Let them cook.
And if they don't let oil through, they don't get paid.
They don't get paid, right? So, and the whole thing with the factions is always about money. That's why the clerics set it up that way.
And they all
That's
got their
why
kids here. Let's get them out of here.
yeah, let's get them out of here. So there's just thinking it through carefully and logically. There's a lot of things where people have to eat and they got to work and they have to get a paycheck, and that's a very powerful thing to have on your side, particularly when the government itself, the sustainability of the economy is basically one thing.
I agree. Let's get to some of
So
your stuff. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go finish your
yeah,
thought.
so you know, I think it's a little bit of a fool's errand to predict these things. We're certainly not. If you're not at the table, you don't know, and I think even if you're at the table, you probably don't know. It's a wild, wild west thing. But the one thing we can't back out of this one.
I'm with you.
We can't.
I mean, aren't you sick of talking about these guys for the last since 1970? When did they take over the hostages?
1979, 1979,
Just since
and
'79, we've been talking about these guys.
we've been kicking the can down the road for so long, and here we are, we're right at the moment of truth. That was last night. So, I listen, I think I give President Trump a lot of credit for
Me
actually
too.
taking action. Um,
Me too. I
I
think he
just
did. I think he's a sledgehammer rhetorically, but he's measured when it comes to policy, especially with this. So you know, this whole notion that he's some wild dog that needs to be put down to the 25th Amendment, whatever it is, it's called.
that's
Just
just
so
not
silly.
that's nonsense. I think the
It's so
way that
silly.
they've done it and the idea that someone is going to tell him what to do too. That this was, oh, he was dragged
Make
into it and all this, and you got the Times again reporting that he was into it, and then blah blah blah, and the only person that was against it was JD Vance, and so on and so forth. Th- I I I I think the last thing he wanted was to do this.
There is a faction in the White House which is talking about JD Vance being against this. I heard, I got some of that, just so you know. But
Well, he's
his
being
point
consistent with
was
his policy position.
right. His point was that we did not have that there was some debate about whether we had the weaponry available, the type of missiles to do it right, to take it on. And he was according to my sources who came to me, he said, he was just being much more cautious than Kane or Brad Cooper or in the military types. We'll see. By the way, this will be interesting. However, this comes out, it'll point to who becomes, my view, the next Republican nominee. If this thing goes south badly, it's JD. I mean, they're setting the stage for JD to say, "I told you," right?
Right.
If it doesn't, and I think it's a better chance it's not. To be honest with you, that's my gut. Better chance it's not. We're not going to let this pissant country control stuff for too much longer. The whole Gulf region wants these guys done. That's a lot of money that wants these guys. And people forget, the Gulf region is nothing if not rich, and they got money there, and they got money to buy stuff, and they want out. They want these guys out. And the fact is, you can't say the infidels are leading the charge when it's the Gulf region, you know, that wants these guys. It's not just Israel and the United States. So my guess is if I was to bet, my algorithm in my head gives this a 70% chance of turning out pretty good, just based on that. And if that's true, Marco Rubio will be the Republican
He'll
nominee.
be the nominee. Yeah.
That's my view. And just because I could see how the chess things, just based on this stuff I'm getting from the White House and from people that connect, not directly from the White House, but people that are connected with the players are telling me. Um, but be that as it may, that's in a few years. What does S3 got cooking? Anything good?
So, Charlie, one of the things that continues to fascinate us is you in the last 15 years, the structure of the marketplace has really changed quite dramatically.
Oh yeah,
And, I think one of the things that we bring to this show is positioning. It's just as important as anything else today. It's almost it's almost as important as price or volatility or interest rates. And we really have done some good work this week. Let's bring up CoreWeave because we love talking about CoreWeave.
I know. This thing is like implanted in my head because of you.
Well, it should be. If you look at what's happening here, you've got short interest up, but interesting passive investors. Look how much it's jumped in this stock, right? The passive is the blue line on the screen. Short interest is the black. Passive has basically taken up all the capacity of the short interest. And so we've always said that this is the leverage stress tests of the NVIDIA business model, right? It's that this is how you do ultra fast computing speed. It's the GPUs, the cards, basically the chips that are responsible for incredibly fast parallel processing and many times parallel processing. And the shorts continue to say, look, we're going to add to our position, which they have. They've added about 18% more shares over the past 3 months. And that's important because in this case, I think shares uh, shorted is actually something you need to look at, not necessarily the notional. And, the stock is year to date positive, right? So the bet is that the bears are saying that the the hardware ages out faster than the company says, and that makes the debt load look riskier. And boy, look at the passive invested. It's just absorbing all the negative bets. So
Yeah,
positioning matters. Now, if you see index funds getting out, and it's very sticky money, right? So this is a 6 month to a year thing. You see that getting out, probably you see the stock fall. So this is something, it's a $43 billion stock. And, passive ownership is more than doubled to 136 million shares. So, and obviously Nvidia being a major buyer in January. So, um, this is fascinating positioning. It encapsulates exactly what you were talking about in terms of AI in the show earlier in the show. This is
Oh,
an
yeah.
exact encapsulation. It's like AI is eating the world, and you have a lot of very sticky money saying this stock is going to make it.
You know, you bring up passive investing, which is a fascinating thing because if you're freaking about taking your money out of this market, people forget that there is a passive nature to investing right now, where 401k money just automatically plows in every month. So just remember that, there's a lot going on here. You're not going to go broke on this war, and the markets. I don't think the markets are going to crash. And that's my opinion. I don't
Yeah,
see.
so
I mean, unless there's something with private credit that I don't know about, like it's much more systemic than we think. Um, there's just this is kind of a strongish economy. We got a lot of oil, and
well, this is the
banks are.
epicenter of it right here. This is the
Yeah.
absolute epicenter of what is happening in private credit because we talked about last week is they had just arranged a syndicated $8.5 billion loan financing the purchasing of the GPUs. So if this stock has the wherewithal, and more importantly, it has the structure to withstand ups and downs, then private credit and this stock and the business model of NVIDIA is going to make it. Because ultimately, it's a supply and
Yes.
demand thing. It's a money supply demand thing. And we're showing you that the supply of money is on its way up and very sticky money.
Um, why wouldn't it be a good thing to have a correction in private credit? I hate that everybody's like
I
freaking
think you
out.
have. I, I think if you talk to people private credit, they tell you that there has been a
How
really
bad
good
can it?
sized correction.
But how bad can that be? That's kind of good, isn't it? We needed a shaking out here.
I mean, is it good that retail gets their gates thrown on them when they go into a higher yielding investment? No. Is it
Unless they
good
were
that
warned it might happen.
yeah, but here's the thing, right? And I don't know why we always get to this point, but retail doesn't want to be told, read the document. Retail wants to be told, you're looking out for my best interests. And this is the fiduciary rule, which everybody hates. But this is why people get so upset. And this is why panics happen is because people say, "Oh, yeah, you can get your money, it's safe, it's not a problem." And then when you go, something happens, and you get Citrini Research writing, bear porn that this thing is going to eat the world and it's terrible and software stocks are going to zero. I want my money back from my private credit who lent money to software stocks to begin with, and GPU stocks like CoreWeave. And they say, no, sorry, you can only get 20% of your money back. Well, read the document.
Well,
It just
Larry
doesn't.
Fink made the
It
point though,
doesn't
Bob.
engender a lot of trust.
But Larry Fink made the point. Their disclaimer wasn't on page 59.
I
It was
get
on
that.
page one.
I get it, and I get it, and understand it, and buyer beware. And here's a disclosure: it doesn't get around the fact that when a mini panic happens, it leaves people with, "I'm never doing this again. I'm finding another use for my money,"
But that's
and it just
good.
happens. And then the
Isn't that
people
good?
forget, and then we're here 5 years from now talking about the same thing. So
There's something called moral hazard. You don't want to create moral hazard. You want to
well, this
create
is not it, but
consequence.
yeah, but I mean, is it moral hazard because there's some kind of free put, or you think that the government's going to step in and subsidize these folks? I don't think private credit is that big.
Well, I mean, if you well, I mean, here's where it gets to be moral hazard. If you telling investors you're not supposed to read the documents, you're not supposed to know what you're investing in. You're not supposed to ask your broker. I mean, most of the stuff is sold through a financial advisor. Trust me, I had a financial advisor try to get me in some private credit. I asked all the questions, and I said, "Nah, it's just not my,
Right.
my blood pressure doesn't need this." So, I mean, I,
Right.
I'm a worry wart to begin with. So I was like, no, not going there. And I looked at the credits. The credits were all like below investment grade. I saw it. But I'm just pointing out. But I asked. Okay, now I'm a little more sophisticated. I get it. But if you got some money, you think we're not talking about we're not talking about like just blue collar workers getting in this. We're talking about mostly sophisticated people. There is some retail leakage lately, but not a lot. And it's like if you don't ask questions and you just throw your money at now, if the broker lies to you, well, that's an event where you sue it's an arbitration case, obviously. And trust me, I've covered a lot of those where brokers screwed up and had to pay, and but we're not talking that here.
Well, one of the things we should move on to is Oracle, because that's part of this
Uh,
story too. And here's something pretty fascinating is that if you look at the hedge fund long interest, the blue line, you can
yeah,
see it peaked. It really peaked in the summer of 25 and then fell quite dramatically in April of 26. So, I hedge fund ownership was about 40 million shares in September of 25, and it stabilized more or less stabilized around 24 million shares. So what's interesting here is that passive and active holders are pretty stable at the moment. So we saw something from one of the big sell side shops that was saying, um, God, there was just all this um, shorting going on in a particular sector, healthcare and software. In fact, what really happened was that the passive long and the active longs were selling. And so this comes down to market positioning. You have found a bottom in this stock, basically. The buyers have established a bottom. They've sold out over 50% of their positions. That sounds like a bottom to me,
yeah.
particularly a stock this big. So the market structure rules, right? And so what we're showing folks here and revealing to you is that, yep, there's a lot of panic, but things have stabilized around 24 million shares. And if you start to watch our data, and we'll drop it here on the show, you'll understand where basically risk limits have been satisfied. There's probably a lot of dry powder here willing to come back into this stock at these ownership levels.
Well, that's interesting. Well, if you look at a 5-year chart of Oracle, not exactly a massacre there.
Yep.
Up, you know, it's not.
Um,
It's off its highs, but it's not like it's off its lows too.
it's off its lows too. That's exactly right. But it's interesting that there's a bottom forming here for ownership. Some room on the upside there. Let's go to Blue Owl. It's one of my favorites.
Oh God, you're one of the few.
Um,
Is there
you
any
know,
bottom here? Do you see?
well, I think what's fascinating is if you look at short interest. Oh, hold on. Let's go back. Thank you. If you look at the blue line, right? Short interest is actually coming off a bit. Obviously went up.
Yeah.
It's actually coming off a bit. There's a bunch of static um, around this particular stock. People confuse the borrow activity with the actual short sale, and so you're going to hear in the marketplace people are borrowing the stock. There's a lot of activity, but it actually the amount of short interest is down, right? So you know the market cap's 13.5 billion. Short interest spiked at 130 million shares and is declining. So people are starting to cover their bets here. And just like Oracle and just like CoreWeave, this is the financier for a lot of these data centers and a lot of these GPU activity. Short sellers are starting to say, maybe this trade is done. The damage has been done. The bottom is here. So we thought that was interesting. And then we also thought that
No, that's a
um,
headline, Bob. It's
no,
not
it's a
like
total headline because it's right. Our
yeah.
competitors get it. Our competitors just get it dead wrong. It's embarrassing actually that they
So
put out the
your
stuff they put out.
your data has shown that we're hitting the bottom here on Blue Owl.
It seems like the selling pressure has eased quite a bit. I mean, people are starting to cover their bets and say, at it still manages $300 billion. The stock has fallen, quite dramatically. You see that in the black line. Maybe, maybe, maybe the time to take some money off the table is now, and that's what you're seeing.
There's some value here still. Yes.
There's some value here, and what we've also seen is that institutions are buying on the dip.
Buying Blue Owl on the dip.
Yeah, yeah.
That is fascinating.
So
So
you look
there's
at
buying on the dip of Blue Owls by major institutions right now.
yeah. You see short interest in the black line. Long interest, active and passive, and long interest hedge funds. You see, there is some buying at the very tail end. You'll see there's a blip, right? You see, people are buying at the lows, and short interest is covering, and people are dipping their toe in. So this fanfare of oh my god, financing equals short interest. Um, you're not getting the positioning right. Folks, you know who you are. We mentioned it last week. I'll mention it again. It's Equilend. We really think it's irresponsible when you report like 1/10 of the picture. Come to us. Look at what we're doing. No one does it like we do it. That's why Charlie, you and I are partners. And we come up
Absolutely.
with stuff that's fact and not fiction. And their stuff's fiction. And our stuff's fact. And let's move on to the next.
More facts.
More facts. So, Blue Owl BDC, um, they manage a business development corp. Um, it's publicly traded private credit funds that lend to mid-sized businesses. Now, here, the short interest is up a lot. So, um, but it's just 1 million shares since the last exchange reported number.
Right.
Is that such a hullabaloo? We're going to say not. So, on to the next, right? Um, this is fascinating. Is you've seen, and this is stuff that you can get on the terminal. Um, the high yield ETF shorts have really surged quite a bit, and the trade is working so far. So you see HYG and JNK, which are the two big high yield ETFs. Those short interests jumped 120% and 71% over the last 3 months. So you're talking about where are people playing this private credit angle? They're playing it in high yield from the short side. And, that's something to keep watching as private credit. My guess is you might see some short covering here, um, because you're seeing the active managers put their toe in the water on the things that are very sensitive across the interest rate spectrum. Charlie, I think we're kind of coming up to the end. We've got about 4 minutes left. Is there anything on your mind that we haven't covered?
No, but I'll never forget the name CoreWeave again. I'll dream
Um,
about CoreWeave. How's that?
you know, I I I gotta tell you, um, I think there's a lot to do here. We can save the shipping sector for the next show because we got a
Definitely.
whole thing. We got like 5 or 6 different, uh, really interesting stocks that we wanna cover
I just
and
want
how
to
they're
hit.
reacting to this.
I just want to hit the Blue Owl thing. Was pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a heterodox view for our viewers that it looks like there's some bottom here. Another heterodox view is Oracle. The S3 numbers are saying where people are finding value. There's this thing might be that's an even stronger. I think call you would say based on your numbers,
Well,
which is
remember, we're just trying to reveal the terrain, and we're
right,
telling
right.
what the positioning is. We're not saying buy it here or buy it
Now,
there. What we're saying is it's a measurement unlike any other.
right.
It's telling you where the long is in shorts, and by the way, by cohort and by style. So hedge funds,
Right.
index funds, what they're doing.
And you're getting a stronger sentiment
Signal. That's right.
signal on Oracle than you get in blue um, blue owl, but
Blue Owl and CoreWeave.
and
One
CoreWeave,
more
but
time.
those signals are still there. So just keep that in
Yes.
mind as you make a decision. We don't tell you what to do. We just tell you where the numbers fall, and that's what makes Bob the best numbers. That's what makes him the granddaddy of data.
Well, I gotta tell you, I get really fortunate, really, 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 really lucky to work with some incredible, and not some, almost, I would say every single person here at S3 is outstanding in their
Oh
own
yeah,
way.
I got to know them. Really smart people.
Really smart people, very savvy,
Yeah.
and they're very common sense. And
And they
we
believe in the
we look
mission,
at these.
and they believe in the mission, which is to
We,
provide information to a
yep.
market that is in desperate need of it. And that's all we're doing here. We're just giving it to
Yeah.
you. Do what you want, digest it. We're going to help you walk. We're going to walk you through it. Not going to tell you exactly what to do, but we are going to tell you that this is good information. Let's end it there, Bob. I think we've kind of exhausted the terrain today. Everything from Iran, don't panic, to Trump, who knows what's coming next, to CoreWeave, Oracle, Blue Owl. This is Charlie Gasparino signing off with my partner in crime, Bob Sloan from S3 Partners, with another riveting edition of Risk and Return.